Yo, what is up? So, how would you feel if the person that you love the most, the person that was like your best friend, stole from you for the last 10 years and you interacted with them on the daily and you didn't even know it? How would you feel? My name is Harvey. I've been in marketing for the last 6 years. And in this video, I'm going to show you why monitoring and knowing how to optimize is literally the most important part about advertising. And most people miss this, right? So, we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about why monitoring, aka optimizing, is like 90% of the work, and this is where most people mess up. There's 1,000 tests to make, but only a few are actually worth it. What frame thinking actually is, and financially modeling 101, right? How to do that. So let me give you some context because that way I started the video was crazy. However, you have to understand why I'm saying that, and I'm not saying that just because it was, catchy, right? I'm saying that because that's how most people are actually operating their advertising. They're throwing money away, they're burning it, and they don't even know why they're burning it. They're just burning it, and they're like, oh, hey, it's doing its thing. I'm getting people to look at my stuff, like I'm happy. Which, if you're willing to settle for that, that's fine. But I'm not talking to the people who are willing to settle for good. I'm talking to the people who want to be great. And if you want to have great advertising, you have to know how to optimize. And if you don't know how to do that, then find someone who does and work with them until you know how to do that. And once you know how to do that, then you'll know how to actually utilize your dollars and get the most out of it. And you won't allow for these platforms to steal your money because you don't know what you're doing. And you don't allow for these billion-dollar companies to rob you blind in front of your face because you're not optimizing your dollars and you're getting the short end of the stick compared to knowing what you're doing and you know how to get the most out of your dollars, right? So why is this important? So you gotta understand that if you were to have a deal with someone and let's say everyone else was getting a certain deal, but when it came to you, your deal wasn't the same as everyone else's. You weren't getting the same amount of things, but you were paying the same amount, right? So this is what advertising is all about. It's the advanced clickers, people who know how to click button at an advanced level, aka media buyers, aka marketing strategists, aka people who are on Facebook or Google on the daily and they know how to click the buttons better than you do. They're getting more out of their dollars without paying more, right? And because we're living in a world where ad costs are increasing day by day, the question becomes, how can you get your message in front of more people without having to pay more? Because once you discover that, then you learn how to distribute your message at a cheaper cost, which gets you more impressions, which gets you more clicks, which gets you more people actually interested in your product and service, assuming those clicks are actually good, right? So monitoring is 90% of the work. Why? Because you have to be willing to go through the aches and pains of testing ad copy, testing creatives, knowing how to actually set up tracking, knowing how to actually create the right ad campaign setups so you don't waste your money doing stupid things like showing your advertising to a group of audience who it's irrelevant to, compared to showing your ads and your messaging to an audience that is extremely relevant to. Because that's why advertising works. It's the people who know how to create these little audiences and they know how to create these little pockets of audiences. They're able to distribute messages over and over to the same people without having to spend tons of money. Because when you rely on Facebook, then you will get screwed out of your money because Facebook's incentives are not your incentives. And this is what people fail to understand because they think, right, because Facebook has a meeting and they say this is the best way to do it, that's actually true. That's not true. Because if Facebook's goal was to get you as much results as possible, right, then they wouldn't be able to make money because their goal is to get you results while making as much money as possible. So their goal isn't just to get you results, because if that was the case, they would make everything super cheap and then the ad auctions would be super fair and the people who are spending more wouldn't get more out of that. They would actually lose money because they were trying to make it fair for you. But that's why Facebook is incentivized to make it work for the people who are spending more dollars And they're not going to completely screw the little guy. They want him to get some results, but they want the person who's spending more money to get more results because they're going to keep spending money, and the more money they spend, then the more Facebook makes, and then that takes you and all the ad auctions out the game. So this is what people fail to understand. It's like there's alternative motives to everything in life, and if you think that someone's genuinely doing something just for the sake of doing something, then you are allowing yourself to be manipulated. So why is this relevant? How can you actually apply this, right? So you have to understand, and this is where like marketing is extremely controversial. This is why I love it, because there's the people who are white hat and there's the people who are black hat, right? It's like a war. The black hat ruin everything for the white hat people, because the white hat believe in fundamentals, foundations, doing things the right way, allowing time to compound and get you results through the moral way, right? And then there's the black hat, right? Black hat is super, they're trying to get every loophole and trying to get the most that they can for doing the least and blah, 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 right? You get the point. Good versus evil, right? It's not. They're both good in my opinion, if you know how to do both. But you got to understand that the black hat know that. Black hat people know that the platform is rigged. And they want the people who are spending the most to get the most because they're spending the most money, so that's going to make the platform the most money, while not eliminating all the small people because they know that they can still profit on them if they just give them enough of what they need, right? They give lower quality traffic to those people after giving them a little something, but the people who spend the most get more. They get better, higher quality traffic because Facebook has or even Google, they have a lead system. They have a scoring system where they know the people who are likely to buy based on activity, and they can predict that with their algorithms, right? So they know that, right? They're not dummies, obviously. So you got to understand that that's the game you're playing, and you must be. If your goal is to like spend money on the platforms, you have to know how to click the right buttons. I know this is like unpopular. People are gonna be like, "Oh, like that's not true. Like it's just about like doing the right things and blah blah blah." But you got to realize everything's a game, and the goal of the game is to understand how to play it at the highest level so you get more out of what you're putting in, and that is going to allow you to outperform people, right? It's like if you're a basketball player, it's like how can you score more points in this quarter than the opponent, because the opponent isn't trying to let you win, they're trying to win. So like how can you win the game? That's the game you're playing. You as the advertiser, you're playing against Facebook because yes, they have what you want, attention, but your goal is to get as much as attention for as little as possible. That's the game, right? So you got to understand the idea of that, and that's why monitoring is the most important part, because if you know how to monitor and you know what buttons to click and you know how to test things against different tests, then you know how to get more for your dollars without having to spend a lot of money. Because if you just run the first advertising test, then you're going to lose money because it's probably not going to be that good. So you have to keep testing to find something that the algorithm likes. That's the whole point of testing, right? To find creatives and ad copy that do better and better and better and better, while understanding that that will fatigue at some point. So you need to have another, and then another, and that game just continues over and over. Which is why, for a business owner, it makes a lot of sense to hire someone for this, because this is really technical, and odds are if you don't have the time or if you don't have the mental bandwidth, because I always say media buying is like an introvert's game, because if you can stay behind a computer and just click buttons, like you're probably going to be a good media buyer. You're going to know how to acquire attention, which is why a lot of affiliate marketers are introverts, right? They know how to get traffic, and they just push that into something that makes money, and then they get a percentage of that, which is why affiliate marketing will never die, because people will do everything and anything to not talk to people. So those people are the most advanced media buyers. Affiliate marketers are. The people who are marketing for their own business, they're just like dummies. Like they're just like walking, don't know how to really generate traffic, clicking buttons, spending money, and they're like, oh, good, it's working. And you got to understand the game you're playing, because you're competing against the affiliate marketers, the people who will die not to talk to someone. They will die before they talk to someone, right? So you're playing that game. You're playing against them and all the people with the big budgets, and then you think clicking a couple buttons is going to do the job. Like, no, you are mistaken, right? So don't make the mistake and be willing to test, because the testing, if you don't know how to click the buttons, testing is your only option. Like, that's what's going to save you, right? That is what's going to do the heavy lifting for you, because If we're going to talk about clicking buttons versus testing, which one's going to have more of an impact? Testing, for sure. But if you know how to click the buttons, then you know how to get more out of those tests, which that's the whole point. So there's 1,000 tests to make, but only a few are worth it. And just so I don't overcomplicate it, these are the tests that are actually worth it. It's different hooks, meaning for your video, testing the first 3 to 5 seconds of the video, changing that, right? That's the first super important test. The other super important test is the first line on the ad copy. Okay? So what's the first sentence they see on the ad copy, right? That's incredibly important, like more than you can imagine, right? And that's why it's the same thing for the video. What's the hook, right? And if it's the image, then you can test the headline, right? Like, what's the headline on the image if it's not a video ad, right? What's the headline, right? And then what I also like, the last important, other than like the headline, because that other than the landing page, I mean, that's a whole different game, right? And I'll talk about that just briefly because it's the same principles. The last is, what is the body of your messaging, right? So if it's a text, what's under the headline, what's in like what's the meat, what's the body of the video, right? What's the middle? Testing that. But before you test that, test the first line, test the ad hook, or like test the video hook, and those are going to give you so much more output than what you're currently doing, because there's a saying, it's like 80% of the dollar that's spent is people that just view it and then skip it. So that means like out of 100 people, 80% are just gonna see the headline and skip it. So that means 80 cents out of your dollar is spent on people just viewing your headline. So if you just fix that, if you just fix the first 2 seconds of your video, that's gonna give you a majority of a difference in the ad sense, like in the ad sense, in the form of talking about just ads. But there's bigger levers than just ads, right? This is where we get more. This is where we're able to get more output based on our inputs, right? So what is that? Now we're going to talk about landing pages. Because yes, you can have an ad that works decently, and if your landing page, if the headline is a killer, out of all those people who click, they're actually going to convert to a book call, to buying your product, blah, blah, blah. And a majority of that comes down to the headline, and a majority of that comes down to the video that you use. But most importantly, your headline. Because that is what makes people stay on the landing page and gets them to actually watch the video. And if they watch the video, they're probably going to be sold, assuming your stuff is good. So that is what you need to understand. Like, the ad can give you a 10 to 20 to 30% boost in your ad performance, but a great headline can give you a 100, 200, 300, 400, 500% increase in total performance. So this is why there's 1,000 tests, but only few are actually worth it. So this is what we call frame thinking, right? So this frame thinking is your ability to ask questions based on the ability to get unreasonable results. So instead of asking like, hey, how can I make my ad 10% better? The question of a frame thinker would say, how can I make my ad work 1,000 times better? And when you ask questions like that, it forces you to think in unconventional ways that were the only pathways that will allow you to get 1,000x and disqualify everything else that will only give you a 10, 20, 40, 30% increase. And it allows you to only think of the most highest return activities, which is why, if you want to know what that is, it's your headlines for the text and for the videos. It's the landing pages. And that's pretty much it, literally. And then the actual body, right? So like if you were to have a banger VSL, or if you were to have a banger ad that like goes viral, or is able to like retain most of the people that actually click to watch, that is where $1 million businesses are created with just a video or just an ad. If the body of it is that good. But if the first 3 seconds suck, no one's gonna get to the body. So you wanna test that first, and then once you see that it's really good at hooking people in, which there's metrics, right? Like how many people actually, there's percentages of how many people actually that watch the ad actually stay to the body, and then how many people get off during the body. Once you understand that the ad hook is good and people are staying for the ad hook, then it's about testing the body. Because if you can test the body, aka the meat of the message, the middle of the message, then you're going to be able to create an ad, or you're going to create I don't know, a video. I don't want to say sales letter because no one knows what that means. No one knows what that means. But that's the technical term. Is you're able to create a video, let's just say the marketing video, right? You're able to create something that gets people to actually watch it and gets people convinced on your argument or your education or whatever the video is about, right? People are actually going to watch it. They're going to be like, wow, this is good, right? That's the goal. And then when it's time to tell them, hey, what are the next steps? They click the button, they go to the next page, they book a call, they buy the product, etc., etc. They register for the video that they're going to watch, right? So that's what frame thinking is your ability to ask questions in a way where it gets you 1,000 times output rather than just like a 10-20% output, which is tactical. You want to think strategically, right? So now we're going to talk about financial modeling, right? Because this is the most overlooked part in anything, to be honest. Most people, right, they run ads and they run it for $10 a day, $20 a day, right? Thinking like that's gonna be enough, right? And a financial model, it's under the thing about I love about financial modeling is you can't make a decision until you've gone through what I call a test cycle, right? A test cycle is how much of it is it going to actually take to deliver a result that you want. And you can't complain or you can't moan or you can't cry until you actually have gone through an entire cycle where you've done all the inputs that actually lead to one result. And if you haven't done that, then you haven't earned the right to say this is not working, or to say this doesn't work, or to say I'm not happy with my results until you go through a test cycle. Which is why when you're running ads nowadays, to go through a test cycle, it costs anywhere from $300 to $500 on average, right? So people spend like $100 and they're like, oh, this is not working. And it's like, well, duh. You haven't gone through a test cycle. So how would you know if it's working or not? And that's why people who don't understand financial modeling, and this is applicable to if you're hiring salespeople and you want them to get paid, let's say at least minimum $4,000 a month, because you know if they get paid that, then they're going to be happy to stay. This is relevant to running ads. This is relevant to building a rocket ship. This is relevant to understanding how many days it's going to take if I, send this little paper airplane, how many days is it going to take to fly to the moon, whatever. You get the point, right? So it's like when you understand the math behind it, you really start to understand why things work and how much of it it's going to take. Because the math isn't 100%. In some cases, like it has to be 100% accurate. In advertising, it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. But if you're accurate 80% of the time, you're going to be very happy. I promise you. Just like in gambling, if I were to go play blackjack or I don't know, whatever, I don't gamble, so I wouldn't know, but like blackjack or like Uno or whatever they play at the casino, if I were to win 80% of the times, I'm going to stay there till I hit $1 billion because I'm winning 80% of the time, right? So if you can get your numbers down through a financial model, and if you can hit that 80% of the time, you're going to be happy. So don't just hear that and be like, oh, that's cool. But write that down and then go to work. Like go to YouTube, understand what financial modeling is, how can you apply it, and build out your first set of a financial model. Or you can do paper napkin math, right? And that's a financial model, right? So you got to understand everything that I said is what people who are good, right? People who are really good at what they do, they understand all these concepts, especially in the advertising world. They understand all these concepts, which is why they are one of the most in-demand people. And if you hire someone off the street, odds are they don't know any of this, right? They just know how to click buttons and tell you that, hey, we got people looking at it. And that's the difference between someone who's trash versus someone who's good. But the difference between someone who's good and someone who's great is they understand how to optimize. They understand that testing is the key. They understand what frame thinking and how to think in ways that get you exponential results, how to actually do that. And then how it's a financial model to get the results they want. So this is the difference between trash, good, and great. So that was helpful. Probably was. So see you in the next one and talk to you soon. Bye.